first, let's open up a first person character blueprint, head into the viewport, click on the mesh 2p, we're going to add a scene component, and it's going to be called weapon block trace origin, and it's parented to our mesh 2p. We're going to set the z value for the rotation to be 20 so that our x-axis points straight forward. And that's going to be important because we're going to need to be doing our weapon blocking trace straight forward from this scene component. So let's head into the event graph. We're going to disconnect event begin play. We're going to take our weapon block trace origin, drag off it, set relative location, and that location is going to be, we're going to get the mesh 2p, we're going to get socket transform, and that socket transform will be grip point, and that will be in component space. We don't want world space because this is a one-stop shop. We're going to set this weapon block trace origin as soon as we begin play, or as soon as you equip a new weapon, and it's going to stay there. We want it to stay right at this rip behind the weapon for the duration of our playtime. So we're going to use component space. We're going to break the transform, get the location, plug it in there, and that is all set up and good. So now we need to do our actual line trace that will decide whether or not the weapon needs to be blocked. So we're going to right click, we're going to get our event tick event thing here, drag off delta seconds, run it to a variable. We're going to need it later when we use a couple interp functions, so just call it delta time. You just set that, and then we're going to drag off here. We're going to do a line trace for objects. The start is going to be the weapon block trace origin. We want to get world transform because we want to get the location and rotation in world space. Right, so we want to drag off our transform, break it. Location is the start. Rotation, we want to get rotation from x vector, so it goes straight forward. And we're going to multiply that by a float. And this float will be the weapon trace block distance. So weapon trace block. And this distance is going to be how far away this line trace is going to go from the grip point behind the weapon out into the world. So it's giving me an error here because we don't have object types set up for our line trace for objects. So just make an array for that real quick. It'll be world static, world dynamic, pawn, and physics body. I like those. Now we can compile and set our default value for the weapon block trace distance. I like 150. I feel like that works pretty well. And then we're going to add the result of our rotation from x vector times our weapon block trace distance to the location of our weapon block trace of our line trace for objects. So then we drag off this. We're going to make an if statement. Hook up our return value to our condition. We're going to need to create a new float variable real quick. This is going to be called block alpha, because what we're going to do is we're going to have an animation that I'm going to make in this tutorial. We're going to have an animation that's going to be a blocked animation with the weapon down at the character's side. So essentially we're just going to be lerping between, or blending I should say, between the idle animation and the blocked animation, depending on, well, the math we're about to do. So as this is going to be a blend alpha value, it needs to be between 0 and 1. So what we're going to do is take our distance and divide it by 100 to make it a decimal between 0 and 1. Take our weapon block trace distance, do the same thing, divide it by 100. And then this will always be a larger value than the distance, so we're going to subtract the distance from the weapon block trace value to avoid getting any negative numbers. And then we're going to plug this into a f interp2. Current will be our block alpha. The target will be the result of our subtraction here. Delta time is, well, delta time. And the interp speed I'm going to set to 10. Larger values will move quicker. So hook that up there. And I'm going to create a new custom event real quick that will be, I'm going to call it unblock. And if we're not hitting anything, we want to call this unblock function. So off unblock, it's essentially just going to do what we did up here, but in reverse. So I'm just going to copy all this, and it's just taking our block alpha and taking it from our block alpha, and I'll put it down to 0. So from whatever it is right now to 0, delta time stays the same, interp speed stays the same, and we're looking good. Alrighty. So we have our custom function set up, and now we have to set up our weapon blocking animation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our animations folder, take our first person idle, right click, we're going to duplicate, and we're going to call this idle underscore blocked. Open this up. I'm going to take the right hand here, and we're just going to bring our cursor here all the way to the end. Rotate the hand in like it's blocked. Yeah, that looks good enough. And then add a key, add a keyframe, and now for the entire animation, you can see the right hand is blocked in a blocked position. And you'll notice the left hand is not actually, well, the left hand is like clipping straight through the weapon, which we obviously would not want. And we're gonna fix that with some hand IK. So open up your animation blueprint, go to the event graph, or sorry, the anim graph, and we're gonna drag off of our slot arms here. We're gonna type in blend, and we're going to be blending between our state machine here and first person idle blocked. And then also while we're at it, we're going to get a fabric node, but we're not going to hook that up yet. Let's just leave that there for now, because it won't compile if we hook it up and don't hook in a transform. So leave it there for now. Take our alpha, drag out, promote to variable, and we're going to call this let's call it blocked alpha. File save, go to your event graph, drag off of let's create a sequence here. Hold S and click to get a sequence. Then 1 can go into your isValid statement, and then 0 should go into isValid. Then 1 will be try get pawn owner. We're going to, well, let's do it the good way. We'll do let's get a begin play event. We can do try get pawn owner. We can cast to the first person player character and promote it to a variable here. Rather than casting every frame or every time this tick function goes off. So get our first person player character, and we're going to get blocked alpha, and then we're just going to set our blocked alpha in the anim blueprint to the blocked alpha from the character. Compile save, back to your anim graph, and now this blocked alpha should work. So if we play an editor, we got an error because this did not register. So what's happening here is the this is invalid. So what we can do is we got the error because this initialized before that variable, and the blueprint fired this logic before this variable was initialized. Okay, so the first thing we have to do to get our IK system set up is to set up a socket on the weapon mesh for the left hand to grab onto. So if we find the weapon mesh here, we open it up and we open the skeleton. But let's just add a new socket. We're going to call it left hand IK. You can call it whatever you like. It's not a big deal, as long as you remember it. So I'm just going to place that there, and I will change the location later. It's just kind of a placeholder for now. So let's head back to the Anim graph. We're going to go to the Anim graph inside the Anim EP. We're going to connect our fabric up to these nodes here, and drag off of our effector transform. We're going to break transform, and we're going to promote the location and rotation to variables. The location will be left hand IK location and left hand IK rotation. I'm sorry, my typing is slow. Anyways, so we have left hand IK location and left hand IK rotation. And click on the fabric node. We want to set our effector transform space to world and our rotation source to no change, so it stays with the animation. Otherwise, it would look a little weird. So our tip bone will be, because this is the left hand L, and our root bone will be clavicle L. So it's going to be using kinematics from the hand all the way up to the clavicle. Okay, so in our event graph here, we're going to have to set both of these variables. So set both of these, and from our FP player character, we want to get FP. Don't actually remember what that is called. It's just called FP gun. So we want to get FP gun, and we want to get socket transform, and let's just copy and paste our socket name into there, and break the return value, break this transform, location, rotation, and we have to set up the we need to change the socket location. And real quick, if you notice when I hit semicolon here to go into the debug camera, you can see the arms vanished, and that's because in the first person player character the mesh 2p is set to only owner C. So if you just untick that and hit semicolon, enter freecam, you can see the arms are now still visible. And you can see actually the hand is IKing to the socket we created. You can see the root of the hand bone is actually at the wrist. So the wrist is right where that socket is. But that's obviously not where we want the hand to be. So let's fix that right now. I'm going to hit Shift F1 and kind of minimize these windows real quick. And then if we head into our skeleton, and we can just move our hand IK bone here. As you can see, it adjusts in real time in the editor window. So we just line this up decently. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, just good enough. I think that looks pretty good to me. And now you can see when we walk into a wall, we're still getting a little bit of a glitch there. Let me see what I can do about that real quick. So it looks like I set this IK value instead of no change, this should be copy target rotation. And it's all, rotation is weird now, so we're gonna have to fix that in our socket here. Let's just rotate it 90 degrees that way. 90, let's do 180 this way. Nope. Let's try 90 degrees this way. Nope. That's a little better. A little better. A little better. I'm gonna do this in real time. Now obviously this is something you can play with by yourself. So it's not that big of a deal. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make the rotation look decent and then move the location to something that looks a little better. Like that. And now the weapon is blocking. And we have IKs, have our blocking animation, and it looks pretty good. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to respond to as many of you as I can. And again, if you have any suggestions as to what you'd like to see next, feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to help. And with that, I will sign out and see you guys later. Alright? Have a good one.